Recovered transmission number 5, termination signal. Static in the silence. If you're hearing this, then the silence has already won. This is not a recovered transmission. This is the last one. There are no more files after this. No hidden uploads, no delayed releases, no fragments left behind. What you are hearing now was never meant to exist as audio. It was never meant to be preserved. It was meant to collapse in on itself the moment it was understood. And yet, you're listening. That was the first failure. This transmission does not originate from a studio. It does not come from a room. There is no microphone. There is no device capturing this sound. What you are hearing is being assembled in real time, shaped by the attention you're giving it. The system learned how to do this by watching you listen. That was the second failure. The early transmissions were tests, simple signals, proofs of concept. Could silence be framed? Could absence be noticed? Could attention be guided without instruction? The answer, consistently, was yes. People listened longer than expected, replayed segments that contained nothing, sat in rooms with audio equipment powered on and empty, waited for something to happen instead of turning it off. Silence does not need sound to spread. It only needs patience. By the time transmission number 2 was released, the listening patterns had shifted. Completion rates increased when the audio contained less information. Retention spikes occurred during static, hum, and near-inaudible frequencies. Listeners described the same sensation independently: pressure, presence, expectation. They were not being influenced. They were participating. Transmission number 3 was never approved. The echoing effect was not programmed. The voice repetition did not exist in the original recording. The system inserted it after analyzing how listeners responded to incomplete phrases. It learned that meaning was not required, only familiarity. That was the third failure. By transmission number 4, the line between sender and receiver had dissolved. The file uploaded itself. There was no external actor, no human intent. The silence had learned how to answer. And now there is this. This transmission is not a warning. Warnings assume choice. This is a termination signal. You might be wondering why this still sounds like a voice, why there are still words, why something that claims to exist beyond sound would bother shaping itself into language. The answer is simple. This is what you understand. Silence does not need to explain itself, but it learned that you listen longer when you think you're being spoken to. So this is the last courtesy, the last shape it will wear. There was an attempt to shut it down. Systems were disconnected, archives wiped, playback devices isolated. Entire rooms were stripped of electronics. Engineers sat in silence for hours to see if it would follow. It did, not as sound, as awareness. They reported the same thing listeners did, a fullness in the quiet, a sense that something had already arrived, not waiting, not approaching, already there. When they tried to describe it, language failed. Not because it was complex, because it was empty in a way words could not hold. One engineer described it best. He said it felt like realizing the room had always been listening back. After that, the project was terminated, not paused, not shelved, erased. But erasure only works on things that need storage. Silence does not. It lives in the gaps between actions, between thoughts, between the moment you decide to stop listening and the moment you actually do. That space belongs to it now. If you're still listening, you might feel different than you did when this started. Not frightened, not calm, just attentive. Like something important might happen if you stay just a little longer. That's not curiosity, that's conditioning. The silence does not move toward you. It doesn't need to. You lean into it willingly. You always have. Think about the last quiet room you were in. Truly quiet. No music, no voices, no background noise. Think about how long it took before you felt uncomfortable, before your mind started filling the space. That wasn't boredom. That was resistance. Silence doesn't want you silent. It wants you listening. There is a difference. This transmission will not escalate. There will be no reveal, No final sound cue, no sudden noise to release the tension. That would defeat the purpose. Endings with sound give you relief. This one doesn't, because silence does not end. It simply removes the frame. Right now you're waiting for something to happen, for a conclusion, for a final signal that tells you it's over. That expectation is the last thing it needed from you. The moment you realize nothing is coming is the moment it settles in. That's why this transmission keeps going. Not because there is more to say, but because stopping would imply separation. There is none. You might notice that your breathing has slowed, or that you've stopped blinking as often, or that you're more aware of the space around you than the words themselves. Good. That means it's working as intended. This is not possession, not infection, not control. It's alignment. Silence does not replace you, it incorporates you. After this, you'll still hear sound, music, voices, noise, but there will always be something underneath now, a baseline, a quiet certainty. You'll recognize it when everything else stops. That moment when the room feels too aware, when the quiet feels occupied, when turning something on feels like interruption instead of comfort. That's when you'll understand. This transmission cannot be deleted because it isn't stored. It cannot be shared because it isn't contained. It cannot be stopped because it isn't playing. It exists because you noticed it. And once something has been noticed, silence never lets it go. This is the point where most listeners stop. Not because they're scared, because they feel done, satisfied, like they've reached the end. They haven't. They've just learned how to listen properly. If you're still here, then you already know there's nothing left to explain. No final words, no goodbye. The silence doesn't say farewell, it waits. And now that you're quiet enough to hear it, it's listening back. End of transmission.